4 in 10 migrants crossing the channel in small boats are from peaceful Albania, according to a leaked secret military intelligence report. It's the first time an official report has exposed how the largest proportion of those making illegal crossings appear to be economic migrants. The Royal Navy report showed of the 2,863 migrants that arrived on small boats between June the 1st and July the 12th of this year, just over 1,000, or nearly 40%, were Albanian, which hasn't had a war in 25 years. So have we been misled about the whole problem after many claimed that they're genuine refugees fleeing war-torn countries? Have the British people been lied to about those migrant crossings? Well, let's debate that with my brilliant panel, who include Laura Dodsworth, Sophie Corcoran, David Hamilton, and I'm delighted to say we continue to be joined by former UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom and former Shadow Home Secretary and former Conservative Government Minister Anne Widdecombe. Let me start with you, Sophie Corcoran. Have we been lied to about the nature of these so-called migrants fleeing for their lives?
Yes, and we have been lied to multiple times. So obviously, the obvious lie we know is about that most of them are Albanian. They obviously haven't come from a war-torn country, so they are not asylum seekers. But the other lies that we get told in the media are as follows. They're all vulnerable women and children. No, they're not. In 2021, 90% of them were men, and they left their vulnerable women and children behind in their so-called war zones that they're somehow coming from. They tell us that they don't have documentation. Rubbish. Nigel Farage has filmed them on multiple occasions, throwing their documentation into the channel. And do you know why they do that, Mark? So they can lie about their age. It has been found that in 2021, 66% of the people that said they were children were actually not children. So all we have been fed about this entire migrant narrative has been lie after lie after lie. And while we're on Rishi Sunak, because in his video, in his campaign video about how he's going to solve the channel, he said the following phrase, "Oh, but they're all good people." How do you know that? How do you know that they're all good people if you don't know who they are, you don't know where they're coming from, and you don't know why they're here? And those sorts of sweeping generalisations are why we are in this mess. Those things saying they're all vulnerable children, you know, they're all good people. That is a lie. Yes, some of them may be good people, a lot of them, but some of them aren't. And those that aren't, Mark, shouldn't be in this country because they are a danger to young women like me. And I'm not having it anymore. I'm not having the lies. And thank God we're allowed to have this conversation. And the reason we're allowed to have this conversation is because of GB News and the impact that GB News has had, whether that be grooming gangs, COVID, the vaccinations. It is because of GB News that we and the rest of the media are finally, after years, allowed to have such a conversation, because it is a disgrace.
And also, due credit to the Mail on Sunday for this exclusive. It's a huge story. I believe that Richard Tice was also instrumental in getting that story onto the front page. So full credit to Richard as well. Laura Dodsworth, have the British people been lied to about the nature of these migrant crossings?
Well, obviously, yes, but I want to interject an important caveat at this point. That report, which was gathered by British intelligence, is new. So I don't know if historically we've been lied to. It's quite new intelligence. And the important caveat is it covers 6 weeks of data. So within 6 weeks, we know that about 40% of migrants were coming from Albania. That's not to say that I would disbelieve that that kind of percentage of the channel crossing migrants are economic migrants, but we do have to remember that does reflect 6 weeks of data. An important point that Richard Tice made in his article, which sort of echoes what Sophie was just saying, was that without wishing to tar all Albanians with the same brush, there is a risk that they could be connected to Albanian crime gangs as well, which is another important point to consider here.
It is indeed. David Hamilton, the issue you've got is that if people are discarding their mobile phones or their paperwork in the channel as they arrive on our shores, or if they cover their faces or run for the hills when they get here, it doesn't bode well, does it?
Mark, I would ask why they want to come here in the first place. Why don't they want to go to France or Germany or Spain or somewhere like that? The answer is because we are a soft touch. They're going to get more here than they will get anywhere else. We haven't got room for them. That's the problem. You know, we are an overcrowded island. Drive any day on the M25. Too many cars, too many people. You know, we're not in a position to have thousands of people arriving here. In many cases, we don't know who they are. They get put up in hotels. There are people in this country who would love to be put up in hotels, who've paid their income tax for years, and they're not going to get anything at all. The problem is that every time that somebody comes up with an idea, like they'll go to Rwanda, which apparently, is not so bad nowadays, it's all the do-gooders who stop this kind of thing happening. So whatever plans the government have, Priti Patel, for example, is forever saying that she's going to do something, but she never actually does anything. It's as though what she says, as though that's enough. Nothing ever happens, and we're just not in a position to take thousands more people into what is already an overcrowded island. And, that's what Brexit was about. And the reason people voted for Brexit was to stop all this immigration happening, and that hasn't happened. That has not been fulfilled.
Or at least decide who enters our country. Anne Widdecombe, you're a former Home Office Minister, former Prisons Minister. What's your view on this expose in the Mail on Sunday today?
And indeed former Immigration Minister, and there is nothing new in this. I can't understand why everybody's reacting as if this is a great revelation. I mean, it doesn't just happen in the Channel. It is ordinary practice for people to get on planes. You've got to have documentation to get on the plane. They then lose the documentation down the plane's lavatories and anywhere else that they can, spend hours airside when they arrive, and then present at the immigration desk, claiming to have come from a destination, from an origin that nobody's got any means of verifying. And that is why when I was Shadow Home Secretary, I said that my policy would mean that immigration officers had to actually meet the planes, because if somebody is getting off a plane that has come from Albania, they cannot say they've just come from Somalia. And yet that very basic, simple thing isn't followed through. Now, of course they're throwing their documents in the Channel. Of course they are, just like they lose them on the planes. And the whole business of trying to ascertain where people have come from is one of our biggest challenges. Quite right to say that we're a soft touch. We're the softest touch going. We haven't got national identity cards. We don't practice routine detention. They can just disappear into a flourishing underground economy, and that is what they come here to do. And there's no revelation in this at all. It's been going on for decades.
Decades, and it's got to stop. The clock's against us. Godfrey Bloom, your thoughts on this?
Well, look, I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned in the programme so far is the elephant in the room, and that is following the strategic fiscal policy of the World Economic Forum. This open door immigration policy and all this kind of thing and globalization is all part of World Economic Forum policy. And we've had a prime minister, the Dutch have a prime minister, the Canadians have a prime minister, the Australians and New Zealanders have a prime minister, who are all following the scheme of the World Economic Forum. But nobody seems ever to want to talk about it. This could easily be dealt with. But it would need to be hard, and I'd like to see either Truss or Sunak actually come out on the hustings and say, I am not going to be further sponsored by the World Economic Forum. They are, incidentally, at the moment, but that's what I'd like to hear. That could turn the whole election round.
Well, I do absolutely hear what you're saying. This rather sinister figure of Klaus Schwab is a man who's famously quoted as saying, you will own nothing and you will be happy. I'm very concerned about these unelected technocrats who are seeking to change our way of life. Godfrey, I couldn't agree with you more, I've got to say. It's all about opinions, though. Anne Widdecombe, Godfrey Bloom, thank you so much for joining us.